Greetings, good people, and welcome to episode 12 of Black Women Are Dope AF. This is a storytelling series that I created to reclaim our ancestral mother's wisdom and amplify the brilliance, the beauty, the power of Black women, and to remind us just how dope we are. The series also serves as a growing archive of Black women's leadership and truth across time and space, resisting erasure, rewriting the narrative, and making sure that we stay centered in our own story. I'm saying, I'm just saying. So I am Barbara Ohuninifa. I'm an author, intuitive guide, ancestral strategist, and creator of Your Soul Knows the Assignment, my latest course on decoding karmic patterns and walking your sacred contract with clarity and purpose. So if you're ready to stop spinning and start healing, check the link in the description. Enrollment is open now through June 26th when we get started. In this episode, though, we are honoring Mama Charlotte Hawkins Brown. She rewrote the rules for Black excellence. You could really say she wrote them. Yes, honey, she was Black, bougie, and brilliant. So I'm going to share her story. I'm going to tell you why I think she's dope. And as always, if you have other reasons you think she's dope, share them in the comments. And if you want to know what sources I use to research and learn more about her so that you can learn for yourself, because I always encourage that. Don't take my word for it. Go out and find out about these women for yourself. And let me know why you think she's dope. And then stick around to the end, and I'll share some tips and medicine for Black women today based on the wisdom that she left for us. Now, if all this resonates with you, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. Y'all ready? All right, let's get into it. Let's talk about Charlotte Hawkins Brown, her story, and how she rewrote those rules for Black excellence. So she was born in 1883 in Henderson, North Carolina. She was raised by a single mother, and together they migrated to Massachusetts to escape Southern racism. So basically, they were a part of the Great Migration, the first wave of the Great Migration of Black folks leaving the South to get up out of Jim Crow, to get up out of the racial violence that they were experiencing, to find better jobs, better opportunities, a better life. And there was a wave of us who left the South who did that, and her family, her mother and her brothers and sisters were a part of that. Now, going back to her grandmother was an enslaved woman. Her name was Rebecca. We give thanks to Mama Rebecca. And she passed down oral history to Charlotte. Charlotte was heavily influenced by Mama Rebecca. Mama Rebecca shared stories of enslavement, survival, dignity, resistance, and resilience and self respect. And all those stories gave Charlotte a deep sense of heritage and pride and purpose and helped inform the direction that she would take. Charlotte's mother, Caroline Frances Hawkins, had 7 children. So Mama Charlotte was part of a family of 7 children. And her mama raised all those children, including Charlotte, alone after separation from her husband. And I say husband, the records are unclear. We know this is right after enslavement. This is at a time where families were still, I mean, hell, we still are now, very estranged and separated. So those 7 children, I say she was separated from her husband. Who knows what happened? And the husband's name was not well documented, nor do we know who the 7 children were by. And, it doesn't matter. She raised her babies. And as she raised those 7 children alone, Charlotte's mother instilled in her the values of discipline and self presentation and racial pride, just like her mother had done with both her and Charlotte. So Rebecca was the grandmother, Carolyn was the mother, and Charlotte is the woman that we are honoring here today. And at age 7, that's when they moved to Cambridge, Massachusetts. And I always wonder and have to ask, and I've looked for evidence of this, if she was of mixed race, because we know what was happening during that time period in enslavement. And sometimes her skin tone or her features sometimes made other people speculate. But it doesn't matter because she identified as a Black woman. She worked for Black women. She did what she did for her people, for Black people. So even if some crusty white man did a thing to her mother that resulted in her, it doesn't matter. She identified with her mama. She identified with the Black women in her lineage. She was a Black woman. But I'm not sure if she was, maybe she was, it doesn't even matter. She was Black. She claimed Blackness. Now, moving on. She attended private schools in New England, elite private schools. She excelled in public school and she won a scholarship to the Cambridge English High School. And because she was smart AF, her academic record and recommendations got her in that school. And she later attended the Salem Normal School, which is now the Salem State University, and she trained as a teacher. And there she was mentored and supported by white liberal reformists, including Alice Freeman Palmer, who we will talk about. Oh, we'll talk about her right now, actually. Let's get into it. So she met or caught the attention of Alice Freeman Palmer. Now, pause for that for a minute. We're talking about a time when people just kind of were able to add aspects to their names or change their names. And I just wonder if Alice Freeman Palmer added Freeman to her name. I'm curious. I didn't, I'm just curious now as I'm talking about it. I didn't go and research that because this ain't about her. So anyway, Charlotte caught her attention when Charlotte was working part-time as a maid and a tutor. Now, Alice Palmer was a white philanthropist, and she was formerly the Wesley College president, and she became Charlotte's benefactor. Now, Palmer was a white feminist educator, and she was committed to women's advancement. And she saw something in Charlotte. She saw her brilliance. She saw that light, and she became a lifelong patron. And she helped fund her education, and she opened doors. Alice Palmer used her privilege as a white woman to open doors for Charlotte. It gave Charlotte access to Boston's intellectual and reformist circles, to teaching jobs, to fundraising and public speaking networks, and gave her access to the cultural capital of refinement that she could use to challenge racist stereotypes. Alice Palmer understood her assignment. She understood how to use her privilege as a white woman to open doors and gave Mama Charlotte access. Now, Mama Charlotte never assimilated. She used that opportunity to uplift her people. And we give thanks to Alice Freeman Palmer because, again, she came here, she knew the assignment, she knew what to do, she knew how to use the privilege that she had at a time when white feminist movements were really, well, not really, were truly only about white women, only supported white women. But she did what she needed to do, she did what she could do to actually help Charlotte. And then later on, sorry, y'all, I'm pausing. Somebody's about to mow the lawn. Good Lord. And so then later on, Charlotte returned south into North Carolina when she was 18 to teach at Bethany Institute, which was a rural North Carolina school for Black children that was run by white Southern missionaries. And she did not, she was shocked at how dehumanizing it was. It was a poor curriculum. There was a patronizing, less than treatment of both the students and the teachers. Hold on, y'all, for just a moment. I am going to, so I think these folks are about to mow the lawn, and why, I do not know. But we're going to pause for just a second. Okay, I'm back. Now let's get into it. Let's keep going. So again, those dehumanizing conditions, poor curriculum, patronizing treatment, it was ridiculous. So within less than a year, she resigned in protest. She was like, I'm not doing this. She stated, I can't teach dignity in an undignified place. And that experience led her to found the Palmer Memorial Institute, named in honor of her mentor, Alice Freeman Palmer, but it was rooted in Black autonomy. With just $10, a single building, and radical conviction, she founded her school and said, "We'll need white control. We reject white control." So the Palmer Institute emphasized academic rigor, cultural pride, etiquette, political literacy. It was a model of Black elite schooling without white permission. It was built on a former Black-owned farm, and she started with one building and seven children, seven students. So here was the curriculum: academic rigor. She taught Latin, English, science, world history. She taught cultural pride through Black history, African ancestry, and racial self-worth. She taught etiquette and deportment, not as submission, but as strategy, and Black elegance as resistance. And I'll talk a little bit more about what deportment means. She spoke about it a lot. She wrote about it a lot. It's not a word that we use in current times, so we'll dig into that a bit. And then the other component of the curriculum was political literacy. Students learned oratory, civic responsibility, and critical analysis, and how to build race-conscious leaders. Wow, we could use that now. We would have had more people show up knowing their assignment in November 2024, and things would be a little bit different now. But in general, understanding your responsibility civically and how to assess and analyze and critically analyze what you see, what you hear, how to think. That's something that is absolutely not taught in public schools. It's not taught in schools in general, I will say. Anyway, let's move on. So, because I will go off on a tangent. So she owned, led, and expanded that school until its closure in the 1970s. Her school became one of the premier Black boarding schools in the country. Now, what's interesting about Mama Charlotte is that she never married. It was a time when the gender expectations of her era was to marry young, and that marriage was a woman's highest achievement. But she chose education and institution building as her life's work. And she did this by design. Her singlehood wasn't a loss. She used it as liberation from domestic limitations that enabled her to lead without permission, to travel freely, to fundraise relentlessly, and to speak boldly in male dominated political spaces. And as we go forward, I'll talk a little bit more about some other aspects of that time period that meant women weren't supposed to use their voices. So being in a domestic marriage situation was going to limit her in what she wanted to do. And this is a path that other radical Black women educators of her era went through, found, and that marriage limited their political and intellectual freedom. So she surrounded herself with sister circles of educators, club women, Black women leaders, including Mary McLeod Bethune, who was one of her close friends. And if you recall, when we honored Mama Mary McLeod Bethune last week, she was married for a time and had a child, but her and her husband split ways because he wanted her to fulfill that traditional role. So she went on with their child, raised her child, and did her work as a single mother. Now, it wasn't always like that. We can go back to Ida B. Wells. We covered her in the Ancestral Activation series. If you go back, there's a video that talks about her there on my channel. And Ida B. Wells, she was about to be on that same path, not marrying so that she could do the work that she was born to do. But she found the right one, or rather, the right one found her. Her husband supported the work that she did. He had the same outlook and saw what she was doing as important. And who knows, behind closed doors, maybe they had some arguments, some situations, but ultimately they were married. They had four children. The children sometimes went with her when she traveled to speak and write and do all the things that she did, or they stayed at home with him. But the point is, they had a partnership and he supported it, which was unique for the time period and damn sure is unique for now, or damn near is. Not everyone is like that, but I think it's important to note that these women understood their assignment. They understood why they came here. And honestly, this is the kind of soul truth that we explore in my course, Your Soul Knows the Assignment. Knowing why you're here and understanding the bigger picture of that. These women knew why they were here and did not allow outside society or family expectations and forces to take them off their path. Their connection with their soul purpose was strong, and they were convicted and committed to it, even if it meant making sacrifices, although they didn't see it as a sacrifice because they were in alignment. They were doing what they needed to do. And we give thanks to Mama Charlotte Hawkins Brown for doing what she did, for staying focused, for raising the children that she educated as her children, for being married to her mission, as she has been known to say. And we give thanks for her staying in alignment with what her sole purpose was. Okay, let's keep it going. Now, why she's dope? Why is she dope? Why do I think she is dope as fuck? Well, she trained generations in power. She built a nationally respected institution run by a Black woman, her, for Black students on Black terms. She's been known to essentially say, I built a school not to impress white folks, but to empower my race. So the Palmer Institute produced doctors, teachers, diplomats, artists, and many of them became leaders in Black civic life. As I mentioned before, she taught African history, she taught writing, oratory skills, and strategy, and she taught deportment. All of it as a mix of Black consciousness and elite readiness. You don't have to sacrifice one for the other. So let me talk about what deportment means a little bit. Deportment is known as it's a person's behavior, their manners, their appearance, their physical carriage, especially in public. Think about how you walk, sit, speak, dress, and hold yourself. In historical and elite educational context, it referred to poise and posture, speech and diction, respectful conduct in public and in private places, adherence to social norms of ladylike or gentlemanly behavior without the limitations of being a lady in waiting, which I'll talk about a little bit as we go forward. Think about deportment. You know what the most impactful example of deportment in current times? Think our forever first couple, the Obamas. The way Barack Obama and Michelle Obama walk into a room, the way they hold themselves, the way they carry themselves, the way they speak, the way they are kind and generous, but clear and focused and strategic. They could have been Mama Charlotte's students, and indirectly, in some ways, they were, just because I said so. But just think about that and think about how white supremacists get so infuriated with them because of how they hold themselves and carry themselves. Even what Michelle Obama talked about, when they go low, you go high. That is a strategy, that's a concept that could have been directly from Mama Charlotte Hawkins Brown. So when you think deportment, think the Obamas. How you walking, how you carrying yourself. And using that as a strategy, using that as a tool to disarm racist stereotypes. Not for their approval, but as a strategy. So that all of that, I think, is a huge part of, in my opinion, why I think she's dope as fuck. The next reason is that she cultivated leadership, not servitude. She trained Black girls who be ladies who lead, not ladies who wait. She's been known to say the world steps aside for the woman who knows where she is going. So let me tell you a little bit about this ladies who wait thing. Because, I've always heard that, but I'm like, what is that exactly? So I dug into it because, that's what this mind does. I need to understand what we're talking about. So in Europe and America, a quote unquote lady was defined by passivity, patience, and decorum. A lady, was supposed to wait for permission to speak, to act, to do anything. She was supposed to wait for permission. She was supposed to wait for marriage. She was supposed to wait for opportunity or wait to be led by a man. And Black women were excluded from the ideal and yet still pressured to emulate it in refined or missionary class environments. So, without any of the so called benefit of being a quote unquote lady, as defined by colonizers, and enslavers, With none of the benefit, we were still supposed to act in that way. But Mama Charlotte said, no, no, we're not ladies in waiting. We ladies who lead. We're not ladies who wait. And then there's this whole aspect of middle and upper class white women that being a lady meant not entering public life. You didn't speak. You waited on your father, your husband, and to receive formal invitations to speak or act. And Black women, many Black women adopted those middle class manners and were expected to perform respectability without questioning racial or gender hierarchy. And we see it still playing out today. This is a part of the quote unquote make America great again that they're trying to bring back. I could go off on a tangent about my own experiences with this in the Christian church, but I'm gonna just keep it moving. We'll do another a video about that. We'll do some cooler than night conversation about that. So, and even the whole ladies in waiting can be traced back to the royal courts of the European monarchy, where ladies in waiting served the queens and princesses, but they had no power of their own. They were subordinate, ornamental, obedient. They were like empty shells that were just meant to act and serve others. So this whole idea of ladies who wait and what a lady is or was by someone else's, meaning colonizing, enslaving white men's definition of what a lady was, is to just be an empty shell of submission, waiting to be led by a man. That's what it meant. That's the clarity of that. So that's not what she taught. She taught we lead. Palmer girls were taught to be the next diplomats, the teachers, the nation builders, and she raised them like that. She taught them to sit straight, speak boldly, and lead fearlessly. She demanded excellence in diction, dress, and deportment, all of those things we talked about. Again, think Obama-ness. And again, none of it was for white approval, but as armor against the world's assumptions and giving you the strategy to move through spaces and places. She looked at Black elegance as protest and tied etiquette to self-determination. She used the word deportment a lot in her writing. It was in the girls' report cards. It was in the syllabus, and it was something she definitely covered in one of her most famous published works that was titled "The Correct Thing to Do, to Say, to Wear," published in 1941. It was a deportment guide for Black students and young women, and she discussed all the things like posture, table manners, tone of speech, etc. It was all about be well dressed, poised, and well spoken, not because it pleases them, but because it protects you. She reclaimed deportment and gave it to us that we can see and saw in Black society. And we give thanks for Mama Charlotte Hawkins Brown for giving us that clarity, giving us that ability to move through spaces and to have our own dignity and to be able to look at the example set by the Obamas and know that that is a part of who we are. Another reason why I think she's dope as fuck is that she refused to sell her vision. She built Black excellence without strings attached. She rejected white money with colonial strings attached. Donors who wanted to censor her curriculum, dilute the Black pride, or just politicize the work that she was doing and her method of doing it. She said no, no to that charity model where Black students were seen as pitiful rather than powerful. The whole flies and extended belly commercials that we would see back in the 80s and shit. They probably bringing them back now. I don't even watch TV like that. But she's like, no, we are a prideful people. So she went to the Black community, and that Black community was sacred. She self-funded and self-governed this powerhouse through um, Black fundraising, Black women's clubs, Black churches, the National Association of Colored Women, and the Delta Sigma Theta sorority. The Black community support was sacred, and everyday folks were turned into trustees of Black futures. Now, this was an era where Black schools often had to compromise for white approval to get the funding that they needed. Think what's happening in the world today in 2025. where funding is being snatched from schools like Harvard University. It's not even a Black institution, but because they won't do what the fascist government that we have now in place in 2025 wants them to do, they're trying to pull all the funding. They're pulling funding, putting tariff, like all of these things, using money as a lever for people. Mama Charlotte Hawkins Brown understood then that you cannot be beholden to these sources of funding because then they own you and they own what you do. So she never took it. She went to her people to get what she needed to move forward. And we give thanks for that example. Child, she was another reason why she was dope as fuck is that with all of this deportment and the etiquette and how she trained her students, she was like the commander of code switching warfare. All the etiquette guides or the etiquette guide that she created, that the correct thing to do, say, and wear, that was like we probably need to break that open now. Or maybe we're done with the code switching part. I don't know. What y'all think? But we give thanks for her because she taught what we needed at the time. She taught what we needed to navigate. And these fools out here still saying we're not qualified. More qualified than you, but I'm just saying. She knew that Black youth needed education and cultural fluency to fight oppression and lead with excellence. She also authored a book titled Mammy, An Appeal to the Heart of the South, and that challenged racist stereotypes and honored the real labor of Black women. I talk a lot about stereotypes in my first book, From Fat, Black, and Unlovable to Beautiful, Powerful Love. And of the main stereotypes, Mammy was definitely one of them. And I went into that and how that stereotype started and how it showed up in the 80s. Think Give Me a Break, Nell Carter. The whole foundation of that was a Mammy uh, storyline, a Mammy stereotype. Think Aunt Jemima before they, gave her a perm and made her a little bit different. The whole concept behind that brand was a Mammy concept. And so I talk about that in my first book, but she authored that Mammy An Appeal to the Heart of the South to bust the stereotypes. Even then, that was published in 1928. She was doing groundbreaking work at a time when it was not safe to do so. Today, the former school campus where she ran the Palmer Institute is now preserved as the Charlotte Hawkins Brown Museum and is the first North Carolina state historic site to honor a Black woman. And that museum includes her personal artifacts, school records, and a preserved vision of Black academic excellence without white permission. Check it out. It's in North Carolina. Charlotte Hawkins Brown Museum. And then a bonus reason I'm going to just throw in here because I usually only do, four or so, that I think she's dope as fuck is that she chose legacy over convention. She was not going to be limited by marriage or motherhood. Again, this was an era where women were expected to marry young and stay in the shadows. She said, I'm married to the mission. And she poured life into her students and she mentored generations of Black leaders and called them her children in purpose. She made a decision to remain unmarried. Unlike these people running around here today to try to make it still seem like the ultimate thing that Black women or any woman wants to do is get married and be in relationship. Don't get me started. She knew what she was here for and knew that the goal was not marriage or motherhood in the traditional sense. It's not to say that there's anything wrong with either of those, but understanding what you're here for and how those play a part and what you're willing to sacrifice and not sacrifice and create new models of what marriage is, new models of what motherhood can be. Ida B. Wells, again, had four children. They rode with her on the road when she had to do her speaking engagements. Not all the time, but some of the time. They got to see their mother doing powerful things. Charlotte Hawkins Brown said she's had many children and she has mothered a cause, and that she did, and we give thanks to her and for her for that. So let's talk about this wisdom. Let's talk about the wisdom as I see it that has really some of the key points that are illuminated for me and the medicine, how we can use the wisdom that she left for us and apply it to our lives because we get inspired by these women. We get inspired by the work that they did, the sacrifices they made, the paths that they took. But how can we apply that now? Because that's what it's going to take for us to continue the mission, for us to continue to do the work, to understand what wisdom we can glean, we can receive from their lives, and in this case, from the life of Charlotte Hawkins Brown, and apply it to our lives so that we can make changes or we can develop or we can elevate, whatever that is. It's the medicine. So the first piece of wisdom that I see is that she taught us that we don't need to mimic whiteness to master power. This is not about proximity to whiteness or mimicking it in any way. Black elegance in and of itself is revolutionary. We weren't ever talking about respectability as the goal. Sovereignty was the goal. She made refinement a tool of liberation. Again, none of it was about receiving white approval, but really to disarm white arrogance. She made elegance an act of resistance, not imitation. This wasn't all about being like them. This was about being like we are, but the highest evolution of who we are. Because understand, we came from royalty. We came from a very organized, elevated people on the continent. They would have you to think that we were just living in the mud and the dirt like what was happening in Europe. But we had elevated societies and complex social structures and political structures and community means. And she brought back that excellence in a different way for the Black children and the Black girls that she educated. So how do we use that today? How do we apply that wisdom, that medicine, that wisdom as medicine in our lives? We have to understand that we can walk in a room with grace and level the room. Power doesn't always roar. It's your presence. It's how you walk with dignity. It's how you're polished, not for performance, but for your own power. It's how you turn every space you enter into a stage, a classroom, and a battle room. It's how you dress like your ancestors prayed you'd be seen. That's the medicine. Own your dignity. Walk in it. We see example. Again, I'm going to just say Obama. Find your Obama-ness within you. It's not about playing a role or putting on airs, but finding the highest evolution of you and walking with that confidence and that clarity unapologetically. The other piece of wisdom that I see is that she didn't wait for a seat at the table. She carved her own. She didn't teach in a broken system. She walked out and said, oh no, and built what was needed. She built what her people needed. She built what was missing out there in the world and created what was needed for her people. She showed us how to lead without permission and to fund freedom without selling your soul. So many folks out here chasing the bag and doing shit that makes no sense in the long run. I wonder what kind of karmic debt they're running up, how their ancestors and their heavenly mates, soul tribes feel about the work that they're doing just to get the bag. She said, no, I have a thing to do and I need to do it and I need freedom to do it. So that means I'm not going to be controlled in marriage. That is dictated by society, the colonizers and the enslavers telling us what marriage and what relationship is supposed to look like. I'm going to reject that. I'm going to reject the money from the colonizers and the enslavers and all of those who would try to influence how I do this work. I need complete freedom to do what I came here to do. She understood her assignment. That's all I'm saying. So what do we do with that? What medicine can we receive from this wisdom that Mama Charlotte Hawkins Brown leaves us? Sovereignty begins when you stop asking and start building. If this system ain't made for you, make your own. Found institutions, not ideas, and say no to money that comes with a leash. And treat community support like sacred currency because it is. It's not blood money. It's not control money. It's not hush money. It comes with love. It comes with support. It comes with an energy of building and expanding and elevating. Claim your sovereignty. Stop asking for your sovereignty and just claim it. That's our medicine. And we give thanks to Mama Charlotte Hawkins Brown for that. And the last piece of wisdom that I received from Mama Charlotte's life is that the real revolution is how we teach our daughters to carry themselves. She said, "Let us train women to be more than ornaments in society. They must be architects. You ain't here to make shit pretty, although you are beautiful because your beauty is brilliance and your brilliance is beautiful. But you're here to build nations like we have been doing since antiquity." She believed this next generation, or her next generation, we're kind of several generations after the fact at this point, needed discipline, cultural pride, and self command to outthink white supremacy. But guess what? We still need that. We still need it. Discipline, cultural pride, and self command. I want you to sit with the self command and understand what that means for you a little bit. She trained diplomats and revolutionaries. Diplomats in dresses and revolutionaries in gloves. She raised girls to lead nations. And in her classrooms, grace walked hand in hand with defiance. So, what do we do with that today, here in 2025? We raise girls to know that they are the center, not the accessory. We raise girls to understand that their life, their mission, their purpose, their essence, their beingness is all that is required. And they need not wait on a man, on permission, on the male gaze, on any of the things that society tells women that they are supposed to strive for in order to be worthy. And teach the girls their history, who they are, strategy, and pride. Daughters who know strategy are incomparable. And train them in elegance and arm them for battle. Again, this is not about assimilating. This is about knowing how to move through the world in different spaces with confidence and clarity. When you teach a Black girl how to walk, you're teaching her how to rule. And we give thanks to Mama Charlotte Hawkins Brown. Let's take a deep breath. Mama Charlotte knew her assignment, and she broke away from the norm or what was expected of her during those times to walk her path. She healed herself and others. And we give thanks, Mama Charlotte. We give thanks for knowing what you came here to do and doing it. So your soul knows the assignment is how we prepare for our journey, how we understand the broader context of what we're here to resolve, what we're here to do, what we're here to contribute, what we're here to learn. It's how we reclaim our sacred path. If you're ready, apply now. We start June 26th, 1 week after Juneteenth. The link is in the description. It's an intimate um, gathering of women who are ready to do the work. So the link in the description will include scheduling a call with me so we can fill into if this is for you. We get a little vibe check popping. Until then, though, subscribe, share this with another dope woman, and keep showing up like your soul planned this. Because guess what? She did. It did. They did. Because, souls don't actually have gender. But until next time, as always, y'all, take good care.